Every single day, there are these invisible decisions being made about our lives, decisions that shape our opportunities, our futures, and more, those calls aren't being made by a person, but by AI. So how do we make sure those invisible decisions are fair, transparent, and, well, ultimately human? Let's get into it.
Just think about that for a second. When you apply for a new job, or a mortgage, or even just a place to live, who's actually making that first critical decision on your application? You probably picture someone sitting at a desk, carefully looking over your file, but that's not really how it works anymore.
That's right. The first gatekeeper you run into is often just a piece of code, an algorithm that's designed to sift through thousands of people to find the best ones. And that one automated step, it opens up this huge, incredibly urgent conversation we have to have about the ethics that are baked right into that code.
So we're handing over this immense power to these invisible decision makers, and while they can be super efficient, they also bring a whole new set of very human challenges to the table.
And this, right here, is the fundamental balancing act we're all dealing with. On one hand, you've got the incredible power of machine learning to process information at a scale we can never dream of. But on the other hand, if we're not really careful, the decisions these models spit out can cause real-world harm, denying opportunities, and basically cementing inequality. The question isn't if we should use this tech, it's how we do it responsibly.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, experts tend to break the problem down into 4 key ethical challenges that we absolutely have to confront.
And here they are, the 4 pillars of ethical AI: fairness, transparency, privacy, and responsibility. You can think of this as our roadmap for this whole discussion. We're going to tackle them one by one.
So let's start with fairness. This is probably the one you've heard the most about, and for a really good reason. Machine learning models, well, they learn from data. So the big, obvious question is, what happens if the data we're feeding them just reflects the biases and inequalities that are already out there in the world?
This slide just nails the disconnect between what we want to happen and what actually happens. The goal is simple, right? Hire the best people. But the process leans on old data. So the risk is that the AI doesn't actually learn what a good candidate looks like. It just learns what candidates used to look like. And in the process, it just automates the biases of the past.
And this example makes it so clear. Let's say a company historically hired more men than women. The AI model might just learn that being male is a feature of a good candidate. Without a human stepping in to correct this, the AI doesn't just continue the bias, it puts it on autopilot and scales it up.
This whole problem with fairness leads us right into our second pillar. Just imagine you get rejected for that job or that loan by an algorithm, and you had this gut feeling it's because of some bias. Don't you deserve an explanation? Well, that's the whole transparency problem in a nutshell.
You see, a lot of these complex AI models are what we call black boxes. Data goes in, a decision comes out, but what happens in the middle, the actual reasoning, is sometimes impossible for even its creators to fully understand. Transparency is all about cracking open that black box so that the people affected by these decisions can get a clear reason they can actually understand.
Now, tied into both fairness and transparency is our third pillar, privacy. To make these super accurate decisions, these systems need tons and tons of data, and a lot of the time, that data is intensely personal. We're talking about your financial records, your medical history, your location. The ethical challenge isn't just about stopping data breaches, it's about making sure this info isn't used in ways we never, ever agreed to make judgments about our lives that we can't even see or argue against.
And that brings us to the fourth and maybe the trickiest pillar of them all, responsibility. Look, if a self-driving car messes up, or a medical AI gets a diagnosis wrong and real people get hurt, someone has to be held accountable. But who? This table just lays out the dilemma perfectly. Is it the fault of the developers who wrote the code, or the company that decided to use the system, or, and this is a weird one, is the technology itself somehow to blame? There are no easy answers here, which is exactly why setting up a clear framework for who's accountable before something goes wrong is so critical.
Okay, so after running through all those challenges, you might be feeling a little nervous. But the good news is, there are brilliant people working on solutions. This isn't about stopping technology. It's about building it the right way.
The path forward really needs a clear plan, and it's built on 3 core actions. First, you've got to establish governance. That means clear rules and human oversight for these AI systems. Second, you have to conduct continuous audits, actively hunting for bias and errors, not just when you launch, but for the entire life of the system. And third, you have to ensure data is used responsibly,
from the second it's collected to the moment a decision is made.
What all these steps really do is shift us from just hoping AI will be ethical to actually designing it to be ethical from the ground up. They build a framework that assigns responsibility and proactively works to make sure things are fair and private before there's even a problem.
And all of this brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway. No matter how advanced this technology gets, the solution ultimately comes back to us. We have to keep a human in the loop.
At the end of the day, technology is a tool, and just like any powerful tool, its impact depends entirely on how we choose to use it. As AI gets woven deeper and deeper into our world, the ultimate responsibility for making sure it acts in humanity's best interest, well, that doesn't lie with the machine. It lies with us. The challenge for all of us is to stay the architects of our future, not just become passive subjects of an algorithm.